Over 2,000 years ago, deep in ancient ruins, archaeologists found a strange clay jar. Inside was an assortment of random metals, including copper and iron. But what they discovered next would change history forever. Because mixed in with these other metals was a strange black substance. At first, they thought it was a type of paint or stain, but then, after further analysis, they realized it was far more sinister. The substance was pure liquid sulfur. But why would anyone put this nasty concoction together? The answer was shocking. And what did it mean for the history of technology? Most importantly, was it all just a terrible accident? To understand this discovery, we need to go back to basics. A battery is a device that stores electrical energy. It can then convert that energy into a usable form, such as powering a light bulb. This would have been useful for creating ornate decorations or jewelry. They discovered that rubbing certain materials together could create electric charges. They also discovered that these charges could be stored in containers, similar to how a battery works. The ancient Greeks were well aware of the power of electricity, but it's unclear if they understood the principles behind it. They likely saw electricity as a form of magic or witchcraft. The motor was found alongside other advanced technology, such as a gear system and a set of scales. The truth is, not much is known about the ancient Mesopotamians. They were also hit by natural disasters such as floods and droughts. Eventually, the region was conquered by other empires, and the Mesopotamian civilization disappeared. You'll uncover secret stories that will change the way you see history, so don't forget to subscribe now. However, the reason behind their disappearance remains a mystery. They left behind very little documentation about their society and achievements. What we do know is that they lived in a region known as Mesopotamia. This is where the rivers Tigris and Euphrates meet. It was here that the Mesopotamians built the first great cities and developed new technologies. This suggests the Mesopotamians were much more advanced than we previously thought. But who were they? Where did their advanced knowledge come from, and how did they lose it? It's also possible that the Babylonians used these batteries for medical purposes. Electricity has long been used to treat various medical conditions, such as chronic pain or paralysis. While this may sound far-fetched, it's important to remember that electricity was not discovered by Westerners. Whatever the case may be, the Mesopotamians vanished without a trace, taking their knowledge and technology with them. Many cultures throughout history experimented with the power of electricity, including the Chinese and ancient Greeks. Batteries work using a chemical reaction between two or more elements. This creates a flow of electrons, which is what generates electricity. This led to the discovery of the first true battery over 200 years ago. The motor was likely not created intentionally. It was discovered in a temple, suggesting it may have been created accidentally during religious rituals. The motor consisted of a copper disc mounted on an axle. It had a series of holes drilled through it, and each hole could be sealed individually. When the holes were covered, an electric current flowed through the copper disc. This caused it to spin rapidly, and that's what created the motor. But the ancient Mesopotamians were even more advanced than we previously thought. Not only did they invent the first battery, but they also developed the world's first electric motor. This was discovered in the ancient city of Ur. It dates back to around 2000 BCE. The simple answer was they had just discovered the first battery in history. This was a shocking discovery. For thousands of years, it was believed that electricity was discovered in the 18th century. Well, sadly, we don't know for sure. One theory is that they placed the copper disc near a fire. This would have created a magnetic field that caused the disc to spin. Other researchers believe the Mesopotamians may have used electromagnetism. This would have involved placing the copper disc inside an electromagnetic field. Either way, they created a fully functional motor over 4,000 years ago. This was when scientists like Benjamin Franklin began experimenting with the power of lightning. However, the discovery of these jars showed that primitive batteries had been created much earlier. They had just uncovered the first battery in history, invented at least 2,000 years before our own modern batteries. One of the most famous is the ancient Mesopotamian city of Babylon. Instead of being powered by chemicals, they were powered by organic materials. It's possible they simply created these jars as a form of decoration. Another theory is that they were used for religious purposes. The jars were discovered near a temple, so it's possible they were used in religious ceremonies. However, there's another theory that suggests the Babylonians used these batteries for electroplating. This is the process of coating one metal with another using electricity. This made them much less efficient, but they still produced a measurable amount of electricity. Scientists believe the jars were filled with a sulfuric acid electrolyte. This is what allowed the copper and iron to produce a small amount of current. When connected properly, this created an electrochemical reaction that caused the sulfur to accumulate. It was founded around 1800 BC and became one of the largest cities in the ancient world. Its walls were so large that they could be seen from space long before satellites existed. There were also other famous structures like the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, while their existence is heavily debated by historians. They are thought to have been one of the ancient world's 7 wonders. But how did they make such an advanced invention so early? And were they aware of its power, or was it all just a terrible accident? Their most famous accomplishment was inventing the world's first battery. Over 2,000 years before our own modern batteries, these ancient batteries were discovered in a completely different way. In 1936, an Iraqi archaeologist named Ahmed Mar was excavating the site. He and his team were sifting through thousands of artifacts when they came across a collection of clay jars. Let's take a closer look at this mysterious discovery. However, inside each jar was a strange assortment of items. Some contained copper, while others contained iron. But what really caught the team's attention was a jar that seemed to contain a strange black substance. At first, they assumed it was some kind of paint, but upon further examination, they realized it was pure liquid sulfur. It was unearthed in Baghdad, Iraq, which is the capital city of a war-torn country. Despite the conflict, it holds many beautiful historical sites. Babylon wasn't just impressive from above. Its people made incredible scientific discoveries for their time. It included advancements in mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. At first glance, there was nothing particularly interesting about them. Each jar was handmade and covered in strange markings. The question was, why would anyone combine these materials? This raised a ton of questions. How did the Babylonians create such an advanced piece of technology? And how were they able to harness its power? The ancient batteries discovered in Baghdad were very different from the ones we use today. But what were they used for? Well, unfortunately, there isn't much evidence to prove that the Babylonians knew how to harness their power. In this scenario, the jars would have been used to coat objects in gold or silver. The Greeks were among the first to experiment with static electricity. It wasn't until the 17th century that scientists began to unlock the mysteries of electricity. However, this is where things get really confusing. But how did the Mesopotamians achieve this? But there's another mystery surrounding this discovery. Sadly, there aren't many answers to these questions. The civilization lasted for thousands of years, but it eventually fell apart due to various factors. The Mesopotamians were constantly at war with neighboring civilizations. Some experts believe that climate change played a major role. Others argue that war and destruction were to blame. If you think this discovery is crazy, stay tuned for more videos about forgotten inventions.